The following program is a public access production of Sherry Wicks and Laughing Child Productions, who assume full responsibility for its content. The content of this program does not represent the views of East Bridgewater Community Television, which serves as a forum for community expression and offers TV training, production facilities, and channel time to all East Bridgewater residents and organizations.
Hello, I'm Sherry Wicks, and I'm the host of Scrapbooking on a Budget. This is the show that shows you how you can make beautiful and unique scrapbooking pages without spending a lot of money. Now, this is our third show, and if you've been following us, you know that each show that we're doing builds on one another. In other words, the first show had information in it that you'll need for the second, third, and so forth. So the last show that we did this page. And if you'll remember, it was our first lesson on adding texture by tearing paper. We did the title here, with the blue. I showed you how to tear each of the letters. And remember that this kind of is the white core paper, and using white core paper, which is colored on one side and white on the other, that's how you get this wonderful white edge. In addition to doing the title, we did some embellishments by tearing. We did the photo mats, and we also did just a rectangular border at the bottom. Now, in this third episode, we're going to continue learning about how to add texture, but we're going to be using specialty papers as well as some of the things that I have here, such as buttons and ribbons and lace. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to go over the different variety of specialty papers that are available in the scrapbooking market. These papers, they cost between $1 to $2 each. You can get them on sale, $2 for $1 sometimes, but there's a variety of specialty papers. And I'm going to start with one of my favorites. This is called embossed paper, and it's usually a tone-on-tone, but it's actually got a raised surface. And by using embossed paper, you don't need to do anything else to add texture. The texture is within the paper. So here's our embossed paper, and this is a fun paper. This is called suede paper, and if you'll remember the old flocked wallpaper from the 60s, you know, the stuff that was in your grandmother's hall, that's what it feels like. But it's called velvet paper, and it's really good for vintage pictures or any kind of paper where you want a softer feel. This paper, it looks like it's part of an acoustic ceiling, but I assure you it's paper. And again, instant texture. I don't know if you can see it, but it's very warbly. There's also got almost little pock marks in it, but it's a really rich, heavily textured paper. And this also comes in different colors, so wide variety here. Now, regular cardstock, believe it or not, actually has a texture on it. There are some cardstocks that are just a smooth surface, but there are some of the better brands of cardstock have what's called a watercolor paper finish, and there's actually a little texture within the paper itself. And when I'm tearing paper, I particularly like to use this kind of paper because you can actually tear it a lot straighter if you tear kind of along the grain or along the pattern here. Now, this paper, it's made from natural fibers, and it's called lace paper, but that's sort of a generic term for it. This particular one has little bits of bamboo woven through it, so again, you don't need to add anything to this to add, you know, this in itself will add sufficient texture to any of your scrapbooking pages. Unfortunately, this kind of paper doesn't tear really well unless you can get, you know, very carefully between each of the ridges, each of the little bamboo ridges. But this is a fun paper to use. Nature shots, beach scenes, something like this would be good for that. Remember I said there's an endless variety of the specialty papers, and this is one of the really fun ones. This is corrugated paper. And now there are products out there where you can make your own corrugated paper, but if you don't want to invest in the corrugator, just find some pre-corrugated paper like this. This is a little bit thick, and again, I don't recommend tearing this kind of paper, but you don't need to because it's really textural. Nice stuff to use. This, I like using these for fall leaves and things like that. Now, this is actually a piece of fabric. It's stiffened fabric that is in the 12 by 12 size, and you can use it for your scrapbooking pages. I particularly like this one because it has Barbie clothes on it. And I remember the first Christmas that my grandmother made me Barbie clothes, and this particular page is going to be used for her tribute album. So I was really happy to find this, but this is actual fabric. So again, lots of variety out there. Now, moving on, some of the specialty papers are in the metallics family, and we have some here that it's already crinkled. It's got a metallic finish, but at the same time, it's being crinkled. You can crinkle your own, but this just happens to come pre-crinkled. Again, in the metallic family, there's this copper finished. It's very shiny. Again, I would use something like this for fall leaves or for a nature scene. Now this one, it's metallic and it's really sparkly. The downside of using papers like this is they show your fingerprints, so be careful when you're touching them, just use the edges. And if you do get fingerprints on them, just take an old t-shirt, 100% cotton, something, and gently wipe it off. But these add a lot of sparkle as well as texture to your scrapbooking pages, and something like this would be good for 4th of July pictures, any kind of patriotic thing. Different colors, of course, would be for holiday shots. Lots of fun to use that. Now this one, these are sparkly ones, and you can see I've used it quite a bit. I actually did a Valentine's page using the sparkly purple, and again, just rich in texture. Unfortunately, it does not tear, and it is very thick, so it's difficult to run through a die cut machine. So just be aware of that when you're purchasing something like that, because this is very thick. Now, we're getting into the area of some of my favorite specialty papers. Here we have some embossed vellum. Now, I had shown you just embossed paper. Well, this is embossed vellum. Vellum is a kind of a brittle paper, and I just love it because you can put it over a color and you can change, and you can get just a shade different in your color. So you're getting a lot of variety going on there. Vellum is very good for doing your journaling blocks. When you're using vellum, it's important to hide your adhesive. You don't want your glue dot or your square of adhesive to actually show through the vellum. So use eyelets or put your adhesive under the photo or under the piece of journaling you have on your cardstock to hide the adhesive. But vellum, wonderful stuff, tears great. There's a variety within the vellum family. We have our metallic vellums. Also, there's vellum that's printed to look like mulberry paper, which is our next category of specialty papers. This one looks like it has some botanicals floating in it. And again, it's vellum, it's the crisp, it's very fun to work with. Now this one, it looks like a solid piece of paper. But what this actually is self-adhesive vellum. And of all the vellums, this is the most wonderful to work with because you don't have to worry about your adhesive showing through. So wonderful stuff. Again, anything that's self-adhesive is going to be a little bit more pricey, but I think you'll be happy with the finished product because you don't have to worry about the adhesive showing through. Now, this is our final category of specialty papers, and this is called mulberry paper. Mulberry paper it's also called tie paper, but it's handmade, and it comes in, again, a variety of colors. And this one's a little thicker, so because it's handmade, you're not going to get any two alike. Now, this particular mulberry paper has actually been embossed with gold. So within each of the categories of specialty papers, you're going to get some crossover. So what I want to do now is show you how very easy it is to work with tearing vellums. If you'll notice, I've started tearing it here. Vellum paper generally has what's known as a grain to it. And if any of you are seamstresses, you know that fabric also has a grain. It tears better one way than the other. And with vellum, it's typically the long way is the best way that it will tear. And I've started this, and I just want to show you how, see, this tears in a relatively straight line. So when you do your photo mats, as in right here, you're going to get one side that is relatively straight. Now, if you start tearing against the grain, which is on the other side, you're going to get the more chop, chop, choppy effect that I did. And again, if you'll remember from the last show, I just use my index finger as a guide, and I just tear along. But vellum is wonderful, wonderful to work with. You just practice, get used to it, but that was a little sloppy. But again, just use your index finger and support as you pull towards yourself. Now, another cool paper to use is this mulberry paper. And I think between the vellum and the mulberry paper, those are definitely my two favorite specialty papers. With the mulberry paper, you don't have to so much concentrate on the grain because you've got these thicker fibers in here, and it's going to mess up any kind of straight line you're going to get. But what you are going to get is a nice little feathery edge. And what I like to do when tearing mulberry paper is to wet my finger in a little glass of water and run it along the edge, because that will give you an easier way to tear. But for purposes of the show, what I'm going to do now is use this little water pen. And this is just a paintbrush with a water reservoir, so I'm going to run a line of water, and I'm kind of squiggling it. So you see how easy this stuff is to work with. And it will tear basically in the shape of the little squiggle that I did. So see how easy this is tearing? And it's tearing roughly along the squiggle lines that I did. So you can get a squiggle, you can get a straight line if you just do a straight line across. But the neat thing about mulberry paper is you can actually do circles and ovals and squares if you want to, because all you have to do is paint a shape with your finger dipped in water or your water pencil, or excuse me, water pen. And I'm just slowly, I want to get a good bit of water going on here. And we're just working like that. All right. That's pretty saturated. I think that's going to give us a pretty good circle. So I'm going to start tearing, and we're going to see what we get here. Oh yeah, we're getting that wonderful feathery edge. There. Can you see that? See, the edge is all feathery, and it's a wonderful, soft look. This would be good for Easter pictures, Easter bunnies, little kids in Easter bunny costumes, things like that. Wonderful stuff to work with. Now, in addition to the specialty papers, there are some different things that you can add to your scrapbooking pages. And a lot of these things I purchased in the sewing department, and a lot of them I also got on clearance, which is even better. So I'm just going to kind of one by one go through each of them. We have a fibers category, and I love to use yarn on my scrapbooking pages because there's some wonderful specialty yarns out there now, and this particular one is called eyelash yarn. And although if you had to buy a skein of it, it would be $5 to $7. So what I'm saying, make friends with someone who knits and get all their scraps, because then you have an endless variety of fibers to work with. So these are the yarns, and this one's a lot of fun. They come in different varieties of colors. Also, there's these nubby yarns that are fun to work with. This particular one is called a homespun yarn. Comes in great colors. Now this one is a little bit finer, and it actually pulls apart, but you see it's got a nubby texture to it. So again, great ways, inexpensive ways to add texture to your scrapbooking pages, and you're not spending a lot of money, especially if you're using scraps that you already have, or you're using scraps that perhaps a friend may have. Now this is called raffia, and this was actually left over from a package. So It shreds. You can shred raffia and you can get all these funny little ends on it, but it's a natural fiber and it's good for linking things together. It's good for doing borders. It's good for stitching around a photo mat. It's just fun, tying bows. It's fun to work with, and raffia is very cheap. Now also, we have some jute. This is just a natural fiber, and you can pick this up in the hardware store. Basically, it's like twine, but cheap, fun, and you can use it for other things like tying packages and dealing with your recycling. Also, let's see, we have a variety of things here. Ribbon. This particular one it's a grosgrain ribbon, and this is about an inch wide, but you can get spools of ribbon, 3 and 4 spools for $1, and each of the spools has between 3 and 6 yards on it. So for very little money, you can quickly develop quite a ribbon collection. And as the series goes on, I'll be showing you how to do more and more with ribbons, because this is one of my very favorite things to do. I weave it, I tie it, I just do all kinds of things with ribbon because it's inexpensive, it's fun to use. Also, there's lace. Now this particular lace is a Clooney lace, and so it's a heavy textural, it almost looks like a handmade cotton lace. But you can get spools of lace at the scrapbooking store. You can also get it in the fabric store, and that's where I suggest you check, is the clearance section of fabric stores or the fabric sections of discount stores. Now these are just little appliques that you would sew on a garment, but the fun thing about using these is you can change the color of them by tea dyeing them or coffee dyeing them, or you can also pick out some of the details with colored pencils or chalks. So they're fun to use, and these are like 50 cents each on clearance. Now, buttons. Remember all these little packages you have from suits and blouses that have all these little extra buttons? Save these. They're wonderful to add to your scrapbooking pages. Also, when jewelry breaks, save the little charms. These are great to add to scrapbooking pages. With something heavy like this, I would definitely use a product called Glue Dots. It's a little dot, it's almost like rubber cement, but it's great for sticking on heavier items. Now, in addition to the charms, also these wee little pins. They're little safety pins. They're no longer just for body piercing. You can use them for scrapbooking. And also, a fun thing to use are different types of beads. And when you're using beads, you need to use something called double-sided tape. And double-sided tape comes in widths of either 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, or full sheets. And they're readily available. But use double-sided tape, especially made for scrapbooking when you're using beadwork. Now, we've gone through a variety of different ways to add texture. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to set up for the next segment, and when I come back, we're going to actually start working on this page. So stick with us, and I'll see you in a little bit, okay? Thanks.
2 years ago, I didn't know anything about Tripoli. Then an infected mosquito bit my 5-year-old daughter, Adriana, and she died. Mosquitoes can carry serious viruses like Tripoli and West Nile virus, so protect yourself and the people you care about. Use mosquito repellent with DEET. Limit being out from dusk to dawn, wear more protective clothing and keep your screens in good shape, and eliminate all standing water around your house. These simple steps can help prevent mosquito bites and maybe even save a life.
Welcome back. In this segment, we're going to jump right in and we're going to start working on this page. Now, what I'm going to do first, I'm going to teach you how to make these velvet ribbon photo corners. And this is a great way to add texture, and it looks complicated, but it's very easy. First thing you want to do is you want to start with a 1-inch square of just scrap cardstock and hold it so that it's the diamond shaped. Because what you want to do, you want nice, crisp corners. And I've already put a bit of adhesive on. So with the point at the top, which will be that point, we take our ribbon and just fold it over. And we, again, nice crisp, but we want the corner to touch. We don't want a gap. So, see? That was so easy. And what we'll do then is just trim the excess. And we have a photo corner, and if you can pretend that this is an actual photograph, and it just slides right in there like that. And you see I've already made one here, and it just slides in like that. But what you're looking for are this nice crisp point here, and I want to show you the back of it. See? The edges line up nice and straight. And that is how you get the nice crisp corner, the little point here. So you need to make 4 of those for this particular page. Now, if you'll remember, I told you that vellum was a specialty paper, and on this particular page, I've used a lot of vellum. And because specialty papers tend to be a little more expensive than your regular background papers, I want to show you how you can save money by using on your specialty papers. If you'll notice, there's a section of this black and white photo mat that you don't see. It's covered up by the pink mat as well as the photograph. So flip your mat over, use the pink mat, that's your second mat, and just lay it down, and then use a pencil and lightly outline the mat. Because what you're going to do, you're actually going to cut out this center section, and because you're going to cut below the line, because you don't want a gap. So you're going to cut inside the area that you just cut, and you just poke a little hole. Let's see if I can do this without cutting myself again. All right, and then just trim. And you're trimming just to save this paper, because part of scrapbooking on a budget means you make good use of everything you have. So I am cutting inside the line, and this way I'll have a piece of vellum that can be used for another photo mat, or I can use it as a journaling box. So I have my frame, and then I have what would have been covered up, but this can now be used for something else. So we'll put that away. Now, if you'll notice also, each of these edges has been torn, and I would tweak this one a little bit before I actually put it on the page. But what you have here, there, you have your first mat and your second mat, and this process of double matting is also called layering, and that's a good way to use up space and get the balance that I talked about in some earlier segments. Now also, we have used some lace and then some ribbon and some buttons. What I want to do now is show you how to make this border. It's a wide strip of the vellum with ribbon, and then the lace is actually behind the vellum. Can you see that? So what I want to do, I want to just start tearing. And remember I said there's a grain to vellum, and when it's a square, it's kind of hard to tell which is the long side. But one side is going to give you an edge that is more or less, straighter than another one. So I'm getting one torn edge here. And put that away, and it looks like I've got about a 2-inch, so I'm going to make myself another torn edge. So, and I'm just going to pull it towards me, and this is going to give me that great torn edge. Now, another way to add dimension that I haven't talked about on any of the shows is using an ink pad to actually ink the edges. And if you can see, against the lace here, I've darkened the edges. And you can use either black or brown, but I typically use brown because I think black is too stark unless I'm actually using, doing a black and white or black, white, and red page. So you just rub it along, and you're going to get this wonderful chalked edge. Excuse me, wonderful inked edge. And that it just makes it darker, and that makes it pop off this light page. See how that's going to work? All right. So we have our background, and then we're going to add our ribbon, And to do that, again, just use that double-sided tape that I talked about. But for purposes here, we're just going to use my regular adhesive. And you want to put the adhesive under the ribbon. And just lay it on. Now you want to take your lace, and at this point you really need to be working on your page. So, and you just lay it all under it. And again, you'll use your double-sided tape. But you see how you're getting this border? And you just repeat the process for going over here. Now, very quickly, I want to go over why this page works in terms of the 4 design elements that I've been stressing in each of the shows. We've already talked about texture. Now, what I'd like for you to do is see if you can find the 5 individual elements of texture that I've added on this one page. We've already talked about the specialty paper, and there's the button. Remember I talked about that? Use the extra ones from your suits and blouses. Here's lace, and then this. Now, that's 4. We're missing one. What you don't see is the thread. I used thread on the buttons. I did not leave the buttons undone. I like to use a bit of thread and a needle and just sew. Just go from the back and leave a bit of a tail because you're going to need to tie a knot. And I go, up and down a couple of times because I want it to be nice and substantial. But thread is a good way to add even more texture, okay? So we've got our texture. Shape. This is a very soft photograph. If you'll notice, it's a picture of, it's my mother and my daughter, so it's my daughter with her grandmother. And it's a soft thing. It was at my grandmother's 80th birthday. So we're using soft colors, and there's no sharp angles here, okay? The sharp angles are right here, but I've softened the angles by using velvet. So it's all playing into this soft, maternal, kind of mushy-gushy theme here. Okay, that's your texture and your shape. Balance, see how I've used layering. Instead of just putting a photograph here, I've used layering. And that fills in the space nicely with the photograph and the border. Now color, that's our last element. I've used monochromatic colors, and I've chosen my colors actually from the photograph. My mother's wearing a black and white print dress. Here's your black and white. And my daughter's wearing a pink and white print dress. So here's that picked up in the background paper. So with all those elements tied together, we have a soft, appealing page. But I've used, again, the 4 elements and not a lot of outside purchased embellishments, but I've made a pleasing page. Now, this kind of wraps it up for our 3rd segment, but I'd like for you to keep in mind that each segment builds on each one. So the next segment, we're actually going to be talking about different layouts, and I'm going to show you how to do about 5 or 6 segments, or excuse me, 5 or 6 different layouts. And depending on how you turn them, you can actually get as many as 20 or more different pages. So we'll be making sort of a page sampler next week, all right? So thank you for watching. I appreciate being able to host you here on Scrapbooking on a Budget, and we'll see you soon, okay? Thanks again now. Bye-bye.